that when I was leading a clinical team, I started each meeting with a mindfulness exercise. Most folks are really good to the opportunity to phone in, work on judgment, keep it around the ball. But I remember one therapist telling me mindfulness has no place in the workplace. And
I'll just keep going.
we all beg to differ. So, I just think as a Hennepin County employee, because we're providing safety net services to so many folks with so many needs, generally our commitments and our demands outweigh our resources exponentially. And I know for myself, mindfulness helps me work without judgment, helps me become more effective and more focused. I think I'm more efficient. It also helps me be more compassionate and empathic, not just to our clients, but to the staff that I manage and work with. And I think the benefits are, as Rob will tell us, there's a lot more evidence about the positive impact mindfulness can have in our workplace settings. So a little bit about Rob, who I just met. Rob has spent over 30 years on the path of designing and redeveloping communities, neighborhoods, and buildings. All along that path, Rob consistently practiced a holistic and sustainable approach with great results. More recently, Rob translated his practice approach to people. He even redeveloped himself, and he used health and well-being coaching, yoga, mindfulness, resilience, nutrition, physical activity, and other modalities to do it. In his third year of graduate school, Rob is currently blending his academic work of pursuing a master's degree in integrative health and well-being coaching at the U of M, where he's concentrating his studies in mindfulness and resilience, with various professional applications in these subject areas. Rob also holds master's degrees in management from Northwestern University, J.L. Kellogg Graduate School of Management, and architecture from the University of Minnesota, and he is also a certification in yoga instruction. So, warm welcome to Rob Wheaton.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, and before we get into anything, we're actually going to get right into a little bit of mindful experience today. I'm going to do this with you. If I could ask you to please pause your lunch, your enjoyment of your lunch, just for a few minutes. Just going to come into the space and get grounded. I'll give you some instruction as we go along, so just know that it's not going to be weird. It's not going to turn into a function. Maybe we can just have our devices silent for the next hour. We'll move on from there. So if I could ask you to just find yourself, I'll call it comfortable in your chair, somewhere between, just totally, disengaged to straight up and down, just somewhere in between that feels dignified. With your feet flat on the floor, your hands just comfortably where they land on your legs or in your lap. And if you choose to close your eyes, feel free to do that. I will be doing that, but if that's not your thing, just maybe have a soft gaze, just out in front and down. So either way is just fine. Just take a nice deep breath in, a nice deep breath out. Inhale and exhales. As long as your nose isn't plugged up, I would encourage you to seal your lips and breathe through your nose. Each exhale, just allow yourself to relax, to melt. Feel the support of the chair behind you, underneath you, floor or earth below you. Just let your belly drop. In our culture, we tend to be hyper interested in abs. If you can just let the ab thing go and just allow yourself to have a little pot belly. Just continue to you're breathing, just take a quick toe to head scan of your body. Just see what's going on with you physically. There are areas of comfort or perhaps discomfort. Just notice. No need to assess or judge or critique. Just witness it. As best you can, if you have areas of discomfort, just breathe into those. Focus on that area and just send your breath in that direction. I would invite you to start opening your senses to your surroundings while keeping your eyes closed. Hear sounds. Maybe there's the movement of air across the skin. It is lunchtime, so there might be a scent or an aroma nearby. So breathe. And then I would invite you to bring into your imagination a place that you might consider a happy place, a place of retreat that you find safe and supportive, nurturing. Maybe a place you've been or would like to go, or perhaps you're just imagining it in your mind. Try to make it as real as possible, bringing all your senses to that place. Aromas, the sounds. In this place, you can open your mind's eye and see it. Make it as real as possible. There might be people there, but they would be the people that would be supportive and nurturing in your life. Positive, caring. Just know that this place is yours. Nobody else's but yours. It's always there. It's always accessible to you at any time, regardless of what's going on around you. Now start to maybe wiggle your toes, your fingers, bring your senses back to the here and now. Breathe into the current space, and when you feel comfortable, if your eyes are closed, you can open them when you're ready. So, quick question. Does anybody feel differently right now than they did before they came into the room? Is there anybody that would like to just share a word or two about what that difference is?
Just less rushed.
Less rushed, okay.
More relaxed.
Relaxed. Those are the typical responses every single time. I've never found anybody to say at least that they didn't feel some level of improvement. So that's just imagine how I just gave you a few minutes with some breathing, some body scan roughly, a little bit of sensory perception, and some guided imagery in it. And it wasn't particular to anybody, it was generic, and yet those are the replies that you're giving back with just a few minutes. So you could see, perhaps, how this could really be relevant in your life if you spent even more time and it was much more focused on you as opposed to more genericized the way I presented it. So, you've got two screens here. I've got this screen here. I'm going to be looking around, moving around. I'm not turning my back on you, just trying to see my place, all right? So, our title today is Mindfulness. one self-care path to well-being. So well-being is the overarching term that relates to basically your health, your overall health, everything that involves your life and health in the broadest sense of the term. And there are lots of different ways to practice health, to practice well-being. You can call that self-care because you're taking care of yourself. And today we're going to talk about mindfulness as one of those self-care approaches. There's many different types, but it is a very powerful, very prominent these days. And a lot of people are wondering what it is, and hopefully I can explain some of that to you today and give you something to take home with you so that you can use this in your daily life as well as at work. Although I'm sure that there's never any need for some kind of stress reduction at work, though, right? Not with this group. So a little bit about me, so I'm not just some random guy. I mean, Sally, you were nice enough to say a few things to introduce me. I'll just add a couple things so that maybe you can, get to know me a little bit and relate to, we can relate to one another. So I'm doing some speaking and consulting with the Center for Spirituality and Healing while I'm getting my master's degree. Also, the certified yoga instruction, and I've been practicing well-being in a broad sense for nearly a decade with yoga and meditation, or mindfulness meditation, and everyday mindfulness being very significant components of that. In my former life, I was an architect and a real estate developer, and that will play into the next screen. So I got from there to here basically because I really needed to find a solution to excessive stress, like the kind of stress that could ultimately kill a person. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but it was severe. So I found yoga, and I'm a body person, so the kind of mindful or meditative quality to yoga along with the movement was really great for me, and ultimately I found mindfulness and meditation as a nice complement to that. But I was in a super high stakes job, developing multi-million-dollar projects, and one project in particular, and if you'll understand my using the context here, not to talk about me, but to give you context about where I was coming from. It was a $95 million project. It was the first one I'd ever done, and I had pushed all my chips in. So I didn't get paid for 6 years. So I was in this deal with all my time, all my money, and it was like a real life roulette wheel. This thing is spinning around, and every day I'm like, which spot is this ball gonna land in? But the roulette wheel went on for 6 years. And during that 6 years, I was, not only was I in a toxic work environment, but, I wasn't seeing my wife. Our son was growing up, and I wasn't part of that. I was there on weekends and holidays and late at night. And it turned out after a while, given, in addition to the demands and intensities of the position, the people with whom I was working weren't exactly the most ethical people that had ever met. And that's a really difficult position for somebody that has perfectionist tendencies and strives for integrity and balance in life. It was just a complete hit and miss, but I couldn't really get out because I was so far invested. So fast forward, I discovered, I had a health scare too, so now I have some chronic disease, and it really just became quite apparent that this just isn't working. I need to do something else. So ultimately, I found my way to yoga and then to the mindfulness. And really from a kind of a two-pronged approach, prevention and regulation. So none of us, I think, unless you're a glutton for punishment like I was, would ever think to go into a tackle football game without your pads on, without practice, and without a game plan. It would just be, you just know how that's going to turn out. Even the guys with the pads and the plans and the practice end up with severe injuries. So, but that's what we do. Like every day when we get up in the morning, go right into the game, and often we don't have a practice of any kind or an intention game plan or our paths. We just get right in there and get knocked around, and we kind of wonder what to do about all this. And we're certainly not alone, but sometimes it feels like we're alone. So the key that I hope you can take away from this today is that this is not going to be like the end-all, be-all solution, mindfulness. And I'll get to that a little bit more on that in a second. But if you're open to it, it can be a very positive influence. But I need to be flexible and creative every single day so that I can keep it fresh for myself. Because I don't want to be doing the same thing every day. But I do need to do it every day, or at least most days. So the Center for Spirituality and Healing, it's all about well-being, and there's many paths. So we're just going to be talking about mindfulness today. But the key point I want to share with you about this is that the Center for Spirituality and Healing, which at first when I heard that phrase, I thought the what? At the research institution, and it's created by physicians and nurses that are science people? What is going on here, right? So I was a little confused by that, but I came to find out that it's been around for 20 years. They do all sorts of research. They have numerous modalities that they train people in. And it's been several thousand people at this point that have gone through the training, not just individuals, but organizations, corporations, etc. So hopefully that gives you a sense of that it's real, it's not just some sort of thing that popped up overnight. So what is it not? Well, like I said, it's not a cure-all. But if you put mindfulness into Google, like I did last night, and press go, you'll get 62 million hits in half a second. So you would think it is the solution to everything. But then you start looking into it, and there's mindful jewelry, and mindful drinks, and mindful clothes, and mission statements have the word in it, but that doesn't necessarily mean the culture there is mindful. So, a lot of people are just grabbing onto it. So, again, part of this is to help, filter through what's going on out there and find what might be fitting for you. It's also not therapy, so it's not about discovering what, that's the root of something that happened in your life. It's really about moving forward. It's not a magic bullet or magic at all. Certainly isn't passive. It's very, very active, actually, even though the mindset or the imagery somebody might have about mindfulness is not doing anything. You're actually it's a non-doing. You're doing and a not-doing, but it takes a lot of effort to decide to do it, much less do it. Definitely not emotionless. I would actually submit that your emotions might be much more valuable and come alive to you. So, for example, here's one that happened to me. When my dog died, I was heartbroken, but it totally wrecked me. But I felt, what it was like to have this dog in my life. I was so grateful that I had that. I wouldn't want a dog any other way, but even though that was hard. But that became very enriching, as opposed to just being dismissive and numbing to it. And lastly, it's definitely not religion. So, mindfulness or meditation exists in religions like Buddhism and Hinduism, but that's just because they have incorporated it into their religion. It's not religion itself. It is not synonymous with Hinduism or Buddhism. So we're talking about a secular practice here that has nothing to do with religion. So if that's a question mark for you, it need not be one. So John Kabat-Zinn, he's considered the father, if you will, of modern mindfulness. So back in the 70s or so, he started converting kind of the old traditions into this modern way of thinking about mindfulness. And he defined it. So what does he say mindfulness is? Well, I'm going to read this carefully because it's kind of a mouthful. He says, mindfulness is the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally to the unfolding experience of the moment. So that's a pretty succinct, distilled definition, which seems like it shouldn't be that hard to understand, but there is some complexity there. So basically, the awareness piece that he's talking about, is just being awake, being plugged in, being engaged, and paying attention. Basically means not distracted, so trying to be undistracted and engaged again, or in a certain way. And purpose. So being intentional about what you're doing, not just kind of floating through and walking around, for example, or doing whatever it is you're doing kind of on autopilot. Is just having an intention about what you're doing. And doing this non-judgmentally, which sort of means being open, being curious, wonder about things, as opposed to predetermining what it is and staying out of the mindset of value judgments of what's good and what's bad. And then lastly, the present moment, being there right now. I mean, we cannot live our lives in the past. We do a lot, we tend to bring it forward, and we can't live it in the future either. And we tend to worry about what's coming and regret what happened. But we can only live right here, right now, which is one reason why the breath is such a good aspect of mindfulness and something to focus on, because you just always have your breath. It's always there. It's easily accessible. And the second definition, the one word I just want to bring up there, is equanimity. And basically that just means it's a mental calmness, composure, or sort of even-temperedness. And again, that doesn't mean you're emotionless and flat and not engaged in life. It's just, you're just much more, in tune, enriched, and focused on what's going on. So I'm going to try to click this going, see if we can get this. This might kind of just loosen up your view on mindfulness.
Your speaker is off.
The what?
I think your laptop speaker is off.
How do I get that on?
Yeah. So the top row.
Sorry.
I'm not sure why it says it's off.
Was thinking the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. So, no, sorry.
That would work. Okay. Get back there. This one here. So hopefully this will work. If this is just not working, let me know.
The screens went off.
What's that?
The screens went off.
Yeah, well, I'll just try to have to do it this way. It's a.
Somebody's heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this can be. Just as an example, driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. Just a little bit of mindfulness. In that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts. I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road screaming at them with your kids in the back of their car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I'd say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists looked in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctors prescribe. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower, and one that is accessible by you immediately.
Hopefully that wasn't too awkward.
I don't think Hennepin County likes Max. If we use the volume in here half an hour ago, we see great. Moves turn on. Is it?
Talk amongst yourselves.
I see that last night too from breaking I would know fast. The entire road was open. Rick was called before. And it's the red light. It's where you're turning to stop. They were the last week. I could walk. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's like we were
Okay, thanks for your patience while I work through my IT matter. So here's a little bit more mainstream, view. So here's Calvin and Hobbes talking about that they're so busy thinking about what's coming ahead that they miss what's going on in their life right now. And then, of course, the image of Michael Jordan that was taken pre-game during the 90s when they had their run of 6 championships, and as you might recall, his coach, Phil Jackson, was referred to as the Zen master. So he worked with the different players in different ways and brought mindfulness and other things to them. But that just gives you a sense that, it's out there. Google uses it, Aetna. Locally, we've got General Mills. They've got meditation rooms on every floor. So it's not some weird thing that just showed up and it has no background. So speaking of which, the background, quickly, Jack Kabat-Zinn probably started his whole MBSR, which is mindful-based stress reduction, in the 70s and 80s, and did some research around that and found that it helped with people that were non-responsive to chronic condition treatments. So that got the attention. But if you were to look at a graph, so here's quantity here and here's time, 1980 and today is over here. That graph with regard to research articles would have been pretty flat until the last 15 years and then straight up. That's why we've got 4,000 articles. People are writing about it crazy. Hopefully they're not writing to see if mindful jewelry really works. But it's just that's why sometimes you can feel like it's just all of a sudden showing up because it's almost going viral in a sense. And then also in the 90s, a group did mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. So they were working with people with depression, and they were able to decrease depressive relapse by 50%. using MBSR and mindfulness. So there are many other articles, that was just a sense. So mindfulness benefits people. So here's just a few benefits that you might be asking about. And I'll explain some of these in a minute with a little diagram of your brain. So, the idea is this helps in general in your life, but we're at work, so we'll talk about task execution, your focus, your critical analysis, your creativity, your stamina. Also your emotional preparation and regulation. That's what I was talking about earlier, about being prepared. And then, I'm in the game. I was prepared, but I got blindsided. Now what do? I need to find my way out. So that can work with stress and anxiety and, of course, other mental health challenges such as depression. Also so self, and personal growth, so your relationships with others. Just opening up your awareness, your self-awareness of what's going on around you, allowing you to expand your perspective, realize you're not the only one that has a perspective. Everybody, in fact, has their own perspective. Communication is huge. Perspective plays right into that. And of course, we really don't get very far as social beings if we don't have relationships at work. So the sequence really is empathy, leads to authenticity, leads to trust, and then relationship. So real quick on that, we actually sort of have this empathy switch, and we don't turn the switch on if we don't see the other person as sane. So the more we see them as sane, the more empathetic we allow ourselves to be. But if you really back up far enough, like you're up in space looking down, or maybe not that far, maybe in an airplane, and you can see people, but you can't distinguish anything about them, they're just people, right? They're the same. So we can get there if we want to. And then being able to just share some vulnerabilities and open up to another person shows that you're being authentic and vulnerable so that they can trust you. It's like when I go to pet my dog, flips over. He's not going to flip over if he thinks I'm going to hurt him. So just, you don't have to be unwise about it, but at the same time, don't be so closed about it either. And really, these traits lead nicely into leadership as opposed to the other way around. It's a lot easier to be a leader bringing those to the table than trying to figure it out later. And then resilience, the last piece. Oftentimes people will think that they either are or aren't a resilient person and they need to somehow, find it. Everybody has resilience built right in. You can't not have resilience. You might not know it. You might not have think you have access to it, but all you can really do, this is a good thing, is just tap into it. Foster it. Mindfulness will allow you to foster and better access what you already have. So it can be a nice shortcut. So here's the thing about the brain I want to show you. So take your fist, whichever one you want, thumb in the middle, fingers over the top. Kind of looks like a mini brain, right? Here's your brain stem coming up, giant brain stem. Here's your prefrontal cortex, or the fingers in the front. That's basically your new brain, the thing that evolved most recently, relatively speaking. And then inside is your older brain, the more primitive parts of your brain, like your amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus. So this part of your brain, deep inside, is the thing that long ago, when this didn't exist, was to keep you alive. Let you know that there are threats. And then as we evolved and threats weren't, like, am I going to make it through the day because that tiger might eat me? Then we could develop the rest of our brain so we could start having more critical thinking. So the thing is that this part of your brain doesn't know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and Uncle Billy that shows up for Thanksgiving and does his whole deal every year. Just that you start going, oh, not that again, right? It doesn't know. You just know it triggers the threat, and the threat starts the whole process. And when that process goes, since its original purpose was to keep you safe, you don't have time to think. You don't have time. This is literally, when you have a stress response, you do not have time to go to the bathroom, or deal with relationships, or digest food. Your blood moves away from your skin in case you were to get bitten, so your skin can get cold and clammy. There's a your heartbeat, starts to pick up, your breathing, so you start breathing up here, not in the belly. So all this stuff is going on if you're stressed. And this part of your brain is not functioning, at least not very well. So we call it flipping your lid or blowing your top. So the whole idea with mindfulness is to either prevent that from going like that, or maybe just partially, right? Or if it did, to find a way to bring it back down. So, I was going to show you another video, but I think I'll pass on that. But in short, it's a bunch of kids, you know how kids are, and they share just from their heart, right? They just don't have any filter, and they just share. They talk about exactly what I'm talking about in their own words. And there's this really cool device they use that'd be great for adults as well. It's basically like a snow globe. Just think of a snow globe, where you shake up and the snow goes everywhere. The whole point is that when you shake that up, that's what your brain starts feeling like when you're stressed out. And if you were to match the way you feel with that snow globe, and then set the snow globe down and sit down and just stare at the snow globe, it's just turbulent going around, but eventually it starts to slow. And then the little snow in there starts to settle. And by the time all of that is relaxed, your fingers have come back in and you can go talk to somebody or figure out the thing that's due or whatever it might be. I kind of felt my fingers going up a little bit when my computer was working here, but Scott, you helped me out and brought it back down. So it can be a vicious cycle, and it feeds on itself, right? The stress response, you get overwhelmed, and now you're overwhelmed, so you're more stressed. But there's also a virtuous cycle as well. And this is where mindfulness comes in. So here's the outside world occurrence or happening, right? And if there's nothing between it and you, I'll say, then you have an immediate reaction. It's knee-jerk, boom, boom, right? But when there's mindfulness in between, there's an opportunity to pause, use this part of the brain, and then respond. Otherwise, it's just, it gets worse, right? But this allows you, and sometimes like the football analogy, you get bumped off, but you can you still have the practice and the pregame strategies. So you just bring it back the best you can, okay? A little visual. So here, here is a quick little demo. So this is called the vortex. It's a kid's bank. It's like a funnel with a little coin reservoir on the bottom. So this coin, when I drop this coin, this is going to represent a trigger, something that might cause somebody to be stressful. So there's the trigger, and now the vicious cycle starts. So hear how it's getting louder, right? And right? And then pretty soon what happens? Well, you got to carry off on a stretcher. But if I introduce some mindfulness, and that'll be what I'm doing here, the trigger happens. Let's say I can't keep it from happening, but I can just apply a little bit of movement with my hand, just a little bit, right? I'm keeping it way up high. But if maybe I'm not practiced ahead of time, or I don't have a way to regulate myself in the moment, it can slip down a little further. But in order to keep it from the bottom reservoir, I have to work harder here. See, I'm moving my hand harder. And if I still can't do it, it's going to kerplunk. But the idea is eventually, wow, that's pretty good. Eventually, that doesn't even go down the chute. You're just like, there's actually a Native American tribe, I think would be the term, where they have evolved this concept so far that they're able to breathe down anger in a fraction of a second. Just not going there. So, vortex, we'll skip a couple things here. So what can we do every day? So some of this is every day and some of this is relevant to your work environment. So as you're moving around, commuting, maybe you drive in a car, you can just kind of notice something new. Maybe you go a different way. I was laughing at this when I put it on here. I thought, well, her new thing is that she's sitting on the other side of the It's like, wow, look at that. So, you know, if you're commuting by bus or train, you know, just check out what's going on around you. There's lots of stuff going on that you're going to miss if you're, you know, not paying attention. Yeah.
You know, what you notice now though is everybody's staring at their phones all
yeah.
the time. I mean, so if they're even
Well,
out, they're
yeah.
not even within the moment. where
It's
at.
addictive, you know, it hits the reward center, you know, that's more fun. And studies, I'm not gonna go into this at this point, but there's a study that shows that people would rather shock themselves than be alone with their thoughts if they're not practiced. So that phone is a perfect solution for that. So when you're moving around, you know, just feel your body. This is key to be. When I was practicing development and architecture, I had no idea what was going on down here. No idea. I was numb to it. I would just suppress, and that's why, you know, I got sick. I didn't pay attention. Your body is full of great information. It's telling you stuff all the time, all your senses and your emotions. So just pay attention. It's just ways to keep in touch with, you know, toes, shoes. It seems kind of silly, but it adds up. If it stays current, then you're in a better position to keep the coin from going down the slot. You know, and when you're with other people, just be there. Just fully be there. Be curious. Every day, that same person isn't that same person. There's somebody new. And everybody's fighting a private battle that you have no idea about. So, you know, it can be compassionate, you can just ask people how they are. It can be very helpful and in a very interesting way. There's a book called The Book of Joy is out right now by the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu. They talk about how in a paradoxical way, by actually moving toward people in their suffering will resolve your own suffering. But we tend to kind of go this way when we're not feeling good. We don't want to be with people, but it's better to go the other way. And our brain doesn't want us to think that, but that's what our heart would tell us to do. So, a little mini body scan. Just checking in with your body. You can do it at your workspace. You're standing in line, if anybody's ever done that. In an elevator. That can help that awkwardness about if somebody doesn't say something right now or face backwards. If you do feel yourself getting a little overwhelmed, try to take a break. Try the breathing exercise. Try going to that happy place. Try reflecting. Anything that we've talked about so far, and there's some more to come, but just being aware of what's going on. And just notice that unpleasant and pleasant feelings, if you do feel something unpleasant, just try to, breathe into it, be kind to it. It's your body telling you something. You're not doing something right. That's one thing that I've learned through yoga is that yoga is not, people think, yoga is that, you got to be stretchy and move around. And yoga is a breathing practice. And if you're not breathing properly, that's first and foremost, that means you're not doing something in the physical posture direction correctly. The postures are just sort of to keep you busy while you're breathing, essentially. Let's see what we want to do. There's a Harvard study. Different things you can do at work. So when you wake up in the morning, instead of grabbing your phone and going right into it, right down the to-do list, what's my schedule, what do I have going, right into the routine, take just 2 minutes, lay there, and just see how you're feeling. What's going on? What's going on with my body today? What am I grateful for? Which could be anything. My gosh, the fact that you woke up, that might be a good start. The guy at the grocery store said, "How you doing?" He goes, "Well, I'm on the right side of the grass." All right, end of story. So you can start there. You can set an intention for the day, how you want to be, in your doing. Similar to that car picture, you find a way to do a short little practice from time to time. And when you get to your workspace, well, now that they're on the phone, but try to avoid just going right to the emails. Emails are also hit that reward center. There's something in our brain that thinks that emails are a present. But they're more like the boobies prize, right? There's not, I mean, how many people have actually gotten that email from the lottery saying you won? You know, it's almost never, especially work related, there's always something to do, right? It's not about some kind of reward that your brain wants it to be about. Bring nature into your space. You know, have a picture of nature, bring a rock, some flowers. Even if you're in the picture, that would be probably even better. Then you can remember, your mind can go there. And take time every hour, maybe a minute, maybe 5 minutes, to look around, move, breathe. If you're feeling kind of tight, look out and expand your perspective. If you're getting it from all directions, then maybe you need to have a little quiet time, more close to the vest, if you will. Meetings. So before and after, set intentions and have reflections. So bookend the meeting with kind of a start and a finish. If you're running the meeting, even better. You can do that for the group, and you can start the group out with a grounding. It doesn't have to be, as much as what I did at the beginning, although that really wasn't that much. You can just spend a couple minutes just having people arrive together, so that everybody's in the same place, or more so than they would have otherwise been. You can even ask people to check in. If it's a small group, maybe everybody checks in, 2 or 3 people. If it's a large group, maybe just rotate around and just get little input. How you doing today? Because we all have a life, right? We're all living life, and we're just here at work, but there's other stuff going around in your life that you can't just leave somewhere else. It's with you, and that might affect how it's going for you today. And we aren't robots, and we're not machines. So it's important to know what's going on, because that will affect the whole picture and build relationship. Here's a quick little thing to do this, thumbnail and fist exercise. So thumbnail, index finger, put your index finger and your thumbnail together. Either side, both sides, doesn't matter. Now move your index finger across your thumbnail. You feel the context or the texture of your thumbnail? Okay, now, keeping your fingers just as they are, we're actually going to switch the perspective. Now, move your thumb underneath your finger. Now you're feeling your finger, the fingerprint part. So that is something, if you just want to be a little more in touch or get out of a little tense situation, say you're at a meeting, these are things you can kind of do under the table, right? You don't want to strike the yoga pose right there in the middle of the meeting. You can also, as long as nobody sees this, you can also just make a fist. Just clench your fist and squeeze as hard as you can, and then release it. There's sort of a kind of a release that can happen, especially if you really do need release, in the meeting. Hopefully nobody takes that literally. The takeaways are really great. I'm really going to try to end early so that I can honor this last one. And I think I'll be able to do that. So the last piece here is just, again, well-being is overarching. And your whole life, what you're all about, what you do in the world is complex and it's multidimensional. And the center has put together this little image to try to capture that. And you're not going to be fully well unless you're attending to everything in your life. Now, it's always moving and changing, so it's never perfect. So don't think there's some perfect static image there and then you can check the box and you're done. But what's going on in your environment, whatever that means. Environment in your car, at home, at work. Your community of people that you relate to, whether it's work people or your worship people or school people. And what's your purpose? What's meaningful to you? What has value? Why are you doing what you're doing? Security, that can mean a lot of different things for folks. Could be literal physical security, could be financial security. Or do you feel safe? That's kind of the whole idea of that grounding at the beginning, was for everybody just to feel like this is a safe place to be. Relationships, again, you need to have strong relationships as social creatures. And that word health is more the physical, mental health as opposed to that broad general health that I referred to at the beginning. So IT glitch aside or averted, I think we're at a point of any questions if you have some.
Do you have any recommended resources or anything
Next. So these are some courses that the center offers. There's some programs. You know, if you just want to go to the center's website, there's all sorts. I mean, it just goes on and on with all sorts of things. Just don't. Here's another recommendation. Don't just put mindfulness in Google and click it and start there. Don't start there. Here's some options for you. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just a quick comment, the thumbnail thing, yeah.
Yes.
I had a friend of mine that worked with the legislature who said, you know, when we were having a vulnerable moment in women talking, she said she would use that to keep from crying.
Oh.
You know, when things were very stressful, it would bring her more into the present moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've tried it, it works.
Yeah. Yeah, because I would imagine in that case, your brain is just going in all sorts of directions, and you just, it's all going to be fine. This is kind of where the resilience kicks in. It's all going to be fine.
He refocuses.
Right. Just need to get past this point. Really? No other questions? Okay. That's it for me. Thanks, guys. There's some questions here if you want to use these
I